Standing there in that outfit, feeling the tension crackle in the stale air, the real fear wasn't the threat of my father's drunken wrath. I'd lived through that more times than I could count. What truly scared me was the lifeless stillness of my mother, sprawled on the floor, unconscious after her daily drowning in bourbon. My father's muttering cut through the silence, slurred and angry, and when he stumbled 2 steps toward me, fist clenched, I knew what was coming. The usual. But something inside me snapped. His arm began to swing, the way it always did, a brutal arc of drunken authority. But this time, I didn't just stand there. I ducked, moved faster than he expected, and landed a punch to the side of his head that made a sickening thud before he collapsed like a sack of wet cement. I stood over him, heart pounding in a messy rhythm of adrenaline, fear, and a twisted kind of pride. I stepped over his crumpled body, walked past my mother who was still breathing but dead to the world, and made straight for my room. I stuffed a bag with clothes, makeup, jewelry, the pieces of myself I had to hide under my parents' roof, slipped into jeans, added a quick swipe of lipstick, and with one last look at the chaos behind me, I walked out, left them both there knocked out cold in every possible way. There was only one place I could go. As I trudged through the biting snow, the cold wind slicing across my face, I clung to the one flicker of hope I had Uncle Arthur. I wasn't just going to tell him why I ran. I was going to show him. 15 years old and already carrying the weight of a broken household. My parents were constantly in and out of jail, mostly for public intoxication or some stupid petty crime, and somehow it always fell on me to keep things together. I was tired of skipping meals, of handing over what little I earned just so they could fuel their next bender. And the beatings, they came too often too easy. But the worst part, trying to be myself in a place where that meant danger. Dressing like a girl was an act of defiance, of survival, but it came at a price. Still, I kept doing it. It was the only thing that made me feel real. My coat shielded my chest from the cold, but couldn't hide my curves completely, especially from behind. With the padding I used and my long hair brushing the middle of my back, no one would guess I wasn't born female, not unless they were really looking. The wind howled louder as I approached the station, the snow coming down in thick white sheets. Inside, the station's warmth wrapped around me like a blanket. I bought a ticket with my last few dollars and climbed onto the train, heading to the only person I had left in the world. The scent of my perfume lingered in the stale air of the train car, a small comfort against the sour mix of old coffee and wet winter coats. I stayed alert, watching the other passengers through a veil of cautious suspicion. It didn't matter how I looked, girls like me, alone, were always at risk. The ride dragged on for nearly 3 hours, uneventful but tense. I barely relaxed until we finally pulled into the station. The wind hit me like a slap the moment I stepped off the train. Snow whipped around me, clinging to my lashes, biting through my jeans. There was no money left for a cab, not that I expected one out here anyway, so I walked. Each step through the piling snow felt heavier than the last. The town was small, quiet, the kind of place where everyone worked in the nearby city and came home to white picket fences. Uncle Arthur lived in one of those neat brick homes, and even though he wasn't really my uncle, just my grandfather's best friend, he was the only adult who ever made me feel seen. Just when I thought the cold might win, a car rolled up beside me. The red and blue lights flashing on the roof made my breath catch. Panic struck. What if my parents had reported me? What if they came after me? But I shook the thought. They didn't care. Not really. The officer rolled down the window and nodded for me to get in. He didn't ask many questions, just drove. I gave him the address and sat back, warming my fingers near the heater, grateful for the silence. When the car stopped in front of the familiar brick ranch with its winding path, I thanked him, stepped out, and faced the final stretch. I rang the bell and waited, heart pounding with a whole new kind of fear. Was I doing the right thing? Would they even let me in? The door opened, spilling golden light onto the snow-covered porch. Yes? Chloe stood there, worry etched into her face, eyes narrowing in concern. Aunt Chloe, it's me, Kyle. Her mouth parted in surprise, then softened. Kyle? From the city? Oh, honey, come in, come in. Uncle Arthur's voice echoed from the hallway as he stepped into view, confusion melting into recognition. Kyle, he boomed, well, I'll be. Come on in, get those boots off before you catch your death. In the kitchen, the warmth was more than just physical. We sat at the table sipping hot coffee, the scent of homemade cookies making everything feel almost normal. Safe. I knew I couldn't keep the truth locked away anymore, not after everything I'd been through. No more lies, no more hiding. I left home today, I began, my voice trembling despite the heat. Uncle Arthur didn't flinch. Your father hit you again, didn't he? Yeah, I whispered. He saw how I was dressed. Lost it. His words were blunt, but Chloe's were gentle. She leaned in slightly, her brown eyes calm and direct. And how were you dressed, sweetheart? Her voice didn't hold judgment, only understanding. I swallowed hard, took a breath, and let the truth come forward. My voice faltered, caught between fear and shame, the words stuck in my throat like splinters. It's okay, dear, Chloe said softly, her voice as steady as ever. You can tell us. I swallowed, trying to breathe through the tightness in my chest. I was dressed as a girl. The room went still. For a moment, silence pressed down on all of us like snowfall, thick and heavy. Then, care to explain? Arthur asked, his voice even but curious. Why were you dressed like a girl, Kyle? I didn't have a choice, I said, barely above a whisper. I had to do it. His brows knit. Someone forced you. No, sir, no one forced me. Then why? I think, Chloe cut in gently, her hand resting on mine. What Kyle is trying to say is, this isn't a costume. It's not about pretending. It's about being. Isn't it? Her voice dropped to something just above a whisper. You didn't have a choice because you couldn't be anything else. You're a girl. That's what you're trying to say, isn't it? I couldn't even speak. I just nodded, eyes swimming with tears I'd tried too hard to hold in. The release came fast and ugly, my shoulders shaking as I cried in front of them, all the pain, all the fear, pouring out like I'd been waiting years to escape. Chloe stood, wrapped her arms around me, and led me gently down the hall. She showed me to the spare room, told me to get into the shower and take my time while she made something hot to eat. It had been so long since anyone had been that kind to me that I almost didn't know how to accept it. The water washed over me like a baptism. I scrubbed away days of dirt and pain, then wrapped myself in a towel and stepped back into the bedroom. My small bag lay open on the bed, revealing my meager belongings, a few skirts, a blouse, some makeup, none of it masculine, and none of it in great shape. Still, I smoothed out the wrinkles in my favorite outfit, a faded pink blouse and navy skirt, then touched up my makeup. My hands trembled, but I managed to pull myself together. When I stepped into the hallway and walked slowly back into the kitchen, my heart pounded with every step. Arthur looked up, then rose from his chair. I froze, unsure what I'd see in his eyes. Chloe touched his arm lightly, a quiet cue, and he simply gave me a long, unreadable look before nodding. She took my hand again, her smile warm as ever, and guided me to the table. I sat across from him, terrified of what might come next. So, Arthur said slowly, pouring fresh coffee for all three of us, you're saying this is who you really are. Fair enough. Then what should we call you? Because Kyle doesn't quite fit a girl who looks so pretty. Chloe finished with a wink as she placed 2 steaming plates on the table. You won't laugh, I asked, my voice barely audible. They shook their heads. Nickel, I said, barely above a whisper, my hands cupping the coffee mug like it was the only thing anchoring me to earth. That's lovely, Chloe said, sliding into the seat beside me. Now eat your dinner, Nicole. I ate like I hadn't seen food in days because I hadn't. A real home-cooked meal, made with care, and for a moment it felt like all the broken pieces inside me were held together by warm mashed potatoes and roast chicken. I even asked for seconds. Chloe laughed and filled my plate again. Later, as we stood side by side doing the dishes, Chloe handed me a towel. "You know we can't go back, right?" she asked gently. I nodded. "Yes, ma'am. If Dad's still alive, he'll kill me when he sobers up." She didn't flinch. "Then you'll stay here. We've got room, and Lord knows I could use some company. And Arthur," she smiled, "he'll be fine. He's just not used to having more than me around." I glanced down at my outfit. "What about all this, the clothes?" "Oh, that," she said, waving her hand. "Right now, you just need to feel safe and clean. The rest we'll figure it out. Girl to girl, okay?" I reached out and hugged her, my wet hands soaking the side of her dress. We both laughed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was somewhere I belonged. That night, I curled into bed with clean sheets and a full belly, letting the warmth of the room settle into my bones. It was the first time I'd fallen asleep without fear. The next morning, Chloe was already gone when I came into the kitchen, but Arthur was at the table, sipping coffee and reading the paper. He smiled when he saw me, like it was the most natural thing in the world. After a quiet breakfast, he said he had errands to run. He was barely gone 20 minutes when the front door creaked open and Chloe returned, snowflakes clinging to her hair and a cluster of shopping bags in her arms. "That snow's a bitch," she said, brushing it off her coat. "But the roads aren't too bad." I went out and picked up a few things. Thought we could see how they fit after we clean up. My eyes widened. Inside the bags were panties, a bra, pantyhose, a long skirt, a cream-colored blouse, a soft gray sweater, even a pair of low heels. My throat tightened as I ran my hands over the fabric. Every piece was beautiful. She picked them out for me. We carried the bags to my room. As I began to undress, I turned away from her instinctively, embarrassed. But she didn't leave, just waited quietly while I changed. And when I looked back, I realized every single thing fit perfectly. She took me into her bedroom and sat me down at her vanity. As she gently brushed out my hair, we talked. "Why do you want to be a girl?" she asked. "I don't know," I said truthfully. "I just do. I always have." She asked about my dad. "How often did he hit you?" "Often," I admitted, eyes focused on the mirror. "And your mother?" I hesitated. "Wasted. That's the only word that fits. She's maybe 85 pounds, hair grey and matted, eyes empty. She used to be beautiful, but now she's just gone, even when she's awake." I didn't cry. I hadn't cried for my mom in a long time. That part of me had dried up years ago. All that was left was anger, hot and sharp and always there. Chloe listened without interrupting, without flinching, letting me pour it out at my own pace. I told her about the fear, the shame, how every day I had to pretend to be someone I wasn't, felt like suffocating under layers of someone else's skin. I told her how I longed to be like her, steady, warm, feminine in the way that seemed effortless and strong all at once. She didn't try to correct me. She didn't tell me I was wrong or confused or broken. She just smiled and kept brushing my hair. And for the first time in my life, I felt like a girl, not just in clothes, but in spirit, in truth, in her eyes. I wanted to call her Mom. The word pressed against my lips more than once that afternoon, but I didn't say it, not yet. I didn't want to ruin the fragile, precious thing that was growing between us. Trust, hope, maybe even love. I couldn't help but notice, Chloe said gently, her hand folding over mine, her voice calm but curious, that you've got some development that's unusual for a boy. Just how big are you, dear? My breath caught. She had seen me. The padding, the baggy clothes, none of it had fooled her. I slumped a little in the chair, cheeks burning as I met her soft smile and warm, unjudging eyes. "B," I admitted finally, "almost a B cup. That's why I wear loose clothes all the time so Dad wouldn't see." "Well," she said with a nod, "thank you for being honest. We can't help you unless we understand, can we?" And just like that, the dam burst. I had nothing left to lose, so I told her everything. How I'd always felt like a girl, even before I knew what that meant. How I'd sneak chances to dress up when I was little, how it made me feel real, like me. But then the booze started. My mom changed. My dad got meaner. And one day, I discovered the pills the ones Mum's doctor prescribed to balance her hormones, she said, but she stopped taking them. Said they made her sick when she drank. So I started refilling the prescription behind her back and taking them myself. How long have you been taking them? Chloe asked, her tone calm, even as her eyebrows lifted slightly. A little over a year, I think. Right after I turned 14. Well, that would explain the smooth skin, she murmured, eyeing me more closely. The hips, your breasts. All of it. But sweetheart, how did you think you were going to hide those changes for another 3 years? I looked down, voice barely audible. I didn't. That's one of the reasons I had to leave. I couldn't hide anymore. Chloe tilted her head, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she asked, with the ease of a woman who'd seen a lot of life, since it's just us girls here, would you mind if I saw? The changes, I mean. All of them. I hesitated, but something in her voice, something maternal and kind, made me nod. We went to my room, and I undressed down to my panties. I stood still while she examined me, clicking her tongue quietly here and there, though never unkindly. I was nervous, vulnerable, exposed but never ashamed. She didn't say much at first, just asked me to get dressed again. As I tugged my skirt back on, she asked about school. I told her we were on winter break, and I didn't have to go back for 3 weeks, not that I planned to. I liked math, English and history, but my grades were awful. Hard to care about school when home was hell. Back in the kitchen, I braced myself for what I knew had to come. She knew the truth now. All of it. And once she told Arthur, I figured I'd be packing by sunset. No way they'd want to keep a half-boy, half-girl freak in their home, right? But Chloe didn't throw me out. Instead, she just kept asking questions, not cruel ones, just practical. When was the last time I saw a doctor? How was I getting money? Did I dye my hair? I don't remember the last time I saw a doctor, I said honestly. But Grandpa left me a small trust fund that Mom and Dad couldn't touch. I withdraw about $50 a week. And the hair? I tugged on a strand. This is all me. Chloe gave a satisfied nod and smiled. Well then, let's get dinner started. Arthur will be home by 5, and that gives us time to make some bread. Maybe a fresh pie, ever baked before. I shook my head no. Well, she said with a playful twinkle in her eye, today's your lucky day. She walked me through every step. I was terrible at it, fumbled the flour, dropped an egg, almost burned my finger, but she laughed and guided me along with the patience of someone who actually wanted me there. Not tolerated, wanted. I didn't know what that felt like until now. At one point, I caught myself almost calling her Mom. Twice. The word hovered just on the edge of my tongue. Chloe was petite, maybe 5'4", with deep brown eyes and hair like cinnamon threaded with silver. Her olive-toned skin always seemed to glow, and when she smiled, really smiled, it felt like the sun came out. Her whole presence made it easier to breathe, easier to be. We were both covered in flour by the time we cleaned up, the scent of baking bread and apple pie filling the house like a warm hug. I washed up, changed into something clean, and helped set the table. At exactly 5, Arthur walked in, shaking snow off his coat. I see you two managed to get along, he said, amused by our floured faces and laughter. We managed, Chloe replied with a knowing grin. Though I think you and Nicole should have a talk. I agree, Arthur said, that deep voice of his calm and firm. He looked at me. In my office after dinner? Yes, sir, I said quietly. I helped finish up the meal and clean up while Chloe and Arthur spoke in the other room. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could feel the nerves building in my stomach like storm clouds. When it was time, I knocked gently on his office door and stepped inside. He sat behind a large oak desk, reading a document. He looked up, waved for me to close the door, and motioned for me to sit. You and Chloe seem to get along well, he started. I like her, sir, I said, hesitating only slightly. She's been really kind to me. She tells me you've been taking drugs that weren't prescribed to you. Is that true? I flinched. They were prescribed, just not to me. So they are illegal, Nicole, he said, and his voice was firmer now, not angry, Just serious. Look, if you want our help, we need to understand the truth. All of it. Can you do that? Yes, sir, I said softly. Now, Chloe says you have the body of a teenage girl. Is that accurate? I nodded. Yes, sir. He studied me a moment longer, then leaned back in his chair. Then I take it you truly see yourself as a girl? I didn't hesitate this time. Yes, sir, I said, steady and clear. I've always felt like a girl. The outside, it's just finally catching up to who I've always been inside. He sat quietly for a moment, fingers tapping once on the desk. Then he nodded slowly. All right, he said. Then that's how we'll go forward. Yes, sir. I've always wanted to be a girl, always. My voice cracked with the sheer emotion of finally saying the words out loud, without fear, without apology. It was like pulling something hidden from deep within and holding it out in the open, hoping it wouldn't get crushed. Arthur paused, taking off his glasses to clean them with the edge of his shirt. He leaned forward, placing his elbows on the desk, and looked at me with a calm, steady expression. Your parents, they gonna miss you. I let out a bitter laugh, soft and hollow. I doubt it, sir. Except maybe when they realize I'm not there to hand over my allowance. Why's that? Dad uses it to buy booze, I said simply. If he can find it, that is. He gave a slow nod. I see. And you've got some money of your own. It's in a trust, I explained. My grandpa left it for me. Mom and Dad can't touch it, only I can, and just a little each week. How much are we talking about here? I'm not sure exactly. Maybe $45,000. I get full access when I turn 18. He sat back in his chair, lacing his fingers across his chest. Well, if we were to arrange for you to stay here, and I'm not saying that's what we're doing, not yet, there would be rules. You go to school. Chloe says you like math and English. What grade are you in? 10th, sir. On winter break now? Yes, sir. Until the 12th of January. He rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. Chloe and I, we never had kids of our own. We're used to a quiet house and set in our ways, Nicole. But your grandfather was a dear friend. I promised him once, long ago, that if anything ever happened, I'd look after you. I didn't think that promise would come knocking like this, but I can't ignore it. Then he smiled at me, a kind smile, the kind that doesn't have strings or hidden meaning. A girl, huh? I'll be honest with you, I don't understand it. Not really. But Chloe tells me what she sees, and I trust her eyes more than I trust most men's words. So we'll assume that's what you are, at least for now. You'll stay here until we figure out what comes next. Then we'll talk again. Fair? Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. My voice broke with joy, and before I could stop myself, I leaned forward and kissed him right on the cheek. He blushed, clearing his throat. I think Chloe's waiting to speak with you in the kitchen. As I stepped out of the office, I was buzzing not just from the relief, but from something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. For the first time, I didn't feel like a problem someone wanted to get rid of. I felt seen, like I mattered. Chloe was waiting for me at the table, her smile soft and knowing. In the morning, she began without missing a beat. You and I are going shopping. You need real clothes, winter ones especially. Maybe a haircut too, and don't argue. I've already made the appointment. The warmth in her voice made my throat tighten. When she reached across and took my hand in hers, I couldn't stop the tears. They started slowly, but when she got up and pulled me into a gentle hug, I broke down, completely sobbing into her shoulder as she stroked my hair and whispered, "It's all right, sweetheart. You're safe now." And I believed her. That night, tucked into the softest bed I'd ever laid in, I prayed quietly that I'd be able to stay. I almost told Arthur what I was feeling, that Chloe felt like a mother to me already, but the words got stuck. I didn't want to push too hard or ruin what had barely begun. Still, as I drifted off to sleep, I dreamed of a home where I could call them Mom and Dad, of a life that might finally begin. The next morning, Chloe wasn't taking any prisoners. She barged into my room holding a tape measure and announced with a grin, "Strip naked. Let's get this done right." Blushing furiously, I did as she said, trying not to squirm while she measured practically everything: bust, waist, hips, inseam, shoulders. Her hands were professional, but her eyes sparkled with mischief, like she was enjoying the moment a little too much. I finally asked, "Are you sure this many measurements are necessary?" "Absolutely," she said without looking up. "I'm not dragging you all over town just to guess sizes." Once I was dressed again in my new blouse and jeans, we headed out. The snow was already melting under the morning sun, leaving the sidewalks damp and glittering. It felt good to be outside, especially with Chloe by my side. Out here, with her, I wasn't hiding. I was living. We stopped at a small plaza and entered a modest little building, a beauty salon. I realized, as soon as the scent of shampoo and warm dryers filled my nose. Chloe said something quietly to the woman at the desk, and moments later I was whisked away. The stylist, a tall woman named Teresa, didn't waste time. She ran her fingers through my long, limp hair, clicked her tongue, and then snip. Just like that, a handful of my hair was gone. I gasped. "What?" "It's okay," she said with a wink. "You're going to love it. Trust me." From there, it was magic. She trimmed and shaped and worked some kind of product into my hair that made it tingle. Then came the rollers, the dryer, and the waiting. When she finally took the rollers out, styled the waves, and handed me a mirror, I didn't recognize the girl staring back at me. My hair was shorter now, brushed into soft strawberry blonde waves that framed my face perfectly. Little bangs kissed my forehead. It was me, but also not. It was the me I had always dreamed of becoming. And then Teresa moved on to my nails, shaping them into gentle ovals and painting them with a subtle plum polish that looked delicate and beautiful. I felt like a princess at a royal salon, and every time I caught Chloe sneaking a glance from behind her magazine, I smiled. She smiled back, and in that moment, I wasn't just pretending to be a girl. I was. "This is super easy to take care of, honey," the stylist chirped as she fluffed the curls framing my face. "Just wash it, blow-dry it, and it'll bounce right back. Practically does the work for you." "Oh," I breathed, still stunned by the transformation in the mirror. "I love it. Thank you so much." Chloe settled the bill with a swipe of her card, giving me that subtle, proud nod as she let me lead us back to the car. I felt like I was walking on air, like something in me had been set free. Next stop was a massive outlet store, the kind with endless aisles and deals on everything. Chloe gave me a crash course in shopping for the essentials, starting with the most intimidating of them all, undergarments. She taught me how to size a bra properly, what kind of panties worked best under certain outfits, and how to tell the difference between good enough and perfect. I was wide-eyed and overwhelmed, but secretly loving every second. I got to pick out 2 skirts, a couple of cute blouses, and a simple but elegant dress. Chloe added a warm winter coat to the cart, plus snow boots, a pair of slacks, and another pair of flats. She grabbed pantyhose, panties, a second bra, and then lunch. Afterward, we picked up some perfume, makeup, and a few pieces of jewelry. I clutched the little earrings and soft pink lipstick like treasures. There was no way I could ever repay Chloe or Arthur, but in that moment, I made a quiet vow to myself. I would try. Every day. When we got home, Chloe gave me a wink and said, "Go on, get changed and make yourself pretty for Arthur. He's got a soft spot for pretty girls." I laughed, half in nerves, half in giddy disbelief, and ran to my room. There, I laid everything out like I was about to get ready for the prom. I slipped into my new panties and bra, then carefully pulled on the pantyhose before heading into the bathroom to attempt makeup. Foundation, passable. Eyeshadow, mint green and surprisingly flattering. Eyeliner, shaky, like I had 3 espressos. Still, I managed. Then I stepped into the dress, soft gray, sweater-like, hugging my chest in all the right ways, and added a dab of perfume, my plum lipstick, and the new flats. I paused in front of the mirror. A girl stared back at me. Me. Heart thudding, I went to find Chloe. She was waiting in the family room, and when she saw me, her face lit up. "You're just darling, Nicole." That hairstyler makes your face pop, and a little makeup always helps a girl shine. I couldn't hold it in. I threw my arms around her and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for making me feel like this." She just hugged me tighter. We were finishing dinner prep when the front door opened. Arthur stepped inside, brushing snow off his coat, and for a moment I froze. Then he saw me. His eyes widened ever so slightly, and that slow smile crept across his face, the kind that told you he saw you, really saw you, and liked what he saw. It was all I needed. I ran to him and hugged him tightly, then stepped back, heart pounding. He looked at me with that quiet, powerful calm of his and nodded once. At dinner, between bites of roast and fresh bread, he cleared his throat and casually opened a small notebook. "I called a friend of mine today," he began, and asked him to make a few inquiries. Chloe and I both looked up. "Your mother," he continued, "tried to withdraw money from your trust today. She failed, of course, but made such a scene that the police were called. She was arrested." I sat there, stunned, not knowing whether to feel relief or sorrow. Arthur went on. "According to your school, your performance is strong. Several teachers said you show promise in multiple subjects, but many of them also noted that you looked, well, the word used was unhealthy. Family Services was preparing to step in." I blinked hard. I hadn't known it was that obvious. "Now, this same friend has made arrangements for you to stay here legally while everything gets sorted out. That means you'll need to transfer schools. Of course, the name on your school records doesn't match the girl we're enrolling, so I've asked our attorney to help us with that." I could barely contain my joy. "Wait, you mean I get to stay here, with you?" "For a while, yes," Arthur said, trying and failing to sound gruff. "Until we figure out a long-term solution." Chloe reached under the table and gave my hand a little squeeze. "But make no mistake, Nicole," Arthur said, setting his fork down. "We'll expect a lot from you. Your room will be your responsibility, clean, tidy always. You'll go to school every day, no excuses, and you'll give 100% to your schoolwork." And Chloe added with a smile, "There will be chores. We're not running a resort here. But we'll make sure you have everything you need," she added. "Books, clothes, even emotional support. You won't go without." "Deal?" Arthur asked. "Oh yes," I said, voice catching. "I promise. I'll do my very best. I'll be the best daughter I can be, I swear." "We believe you, Nicole," Chloe said softly. "We're counting on you." Arthur, big, solid Arthur, might have looked like a mountain of a man, but under that deep baritone and commanding presence, I saw something gentle, something warm. He didn't need to raise his voice to be respected. He carried it in his stillness, in the way he observed before speaking, in how he only asked for truth and nothing else. There was a power in that, a quiet kind I'd never seen before. After dinner, he asked me to bring my coffee and follow him into his office. My stomach flipped, but I did as I was told, stepping into that warm little room that already felt more like home than any place I'd ever known. "You have a church?" Arthur asked the moment I settled into the chair across from his desk, coffee still warming my hand. I blinked, caught off guard. No, not really. I went with a friend a few times." He leaned forward slightly, watching me. "Chloe and I are Jewish. Does that bother you?" "No, sir, not at all." "Why?" "Because once this situation is sorted," he said with deliberate calm, "we'll be adding your name to the rolls at Temple. If and only if you choose to be part of this family permanently, that is. If we do that, you'll be expected to attend classes, to understand what it means. We won't force it, but as a family." "I'd like that," I said quickly, without hesitation. "I really would." "And stop calling me sir," he said with a grin. "You make me feel like I'm 1 foot in the grave." "Yes, of course." He chuckled, soft and real. "I think Chloe's already looking forward to having a daughter. And I've got a feeling she's going to spoil you rotten, so you'd better be careful. It's addictive." I smiled, teasing. "Like you won't." He tried to keep a straight face. "Yes, dear, just like I will." From that moment on, life began to feel right. Chloe and I fell into an easy rhythm. We cleaned together, cooked meals side by side, And every day she taught me something new: how to hem a skirt, how to roast a chicken, how to thread a sewing machine. She gave me freedom with the computer, helped me research clothes, schools, hormones, and dreams. We went out for more shopping, more skirts, another dress, and a pair of sleek black heels I swore made me taller and more graceful. Chloe let me practice my hair, guided me as I tried bolder makeup looks, and encouraged me every time I got it wrong and wanted to give up. Slowly, I stopped needing help. I started becoming. That Friday, Arthur came home with a stack of documents and a serious look on his face. He dropped them on the table, called Chloe and me over, and motioned for us to sit. Under my direction, he began, flipping the first page. Family Social Services investigated your case and concluded your parents are unfit to. He scanned the words. Ray said minor child in an atmosphere of trust and growth. He flipped the page. And he continued, temporary custody of said minor child has been awarded to the petitioners. He paused and smiled, which would be us. I stared at him, unblinking. Until such time as your parents are able to provide adequate care, which, frankly, I don't see happening. You're with us. Welcome home, Nicole. There was a soft shimmer in his eyes, not quite a tear, but close enough. I leaned over, wiped the glint from his cheek with my fingertip, and kissed him gently on the lips. We held hands, the three of us, while Arthur offered a quiet prayer, thanking God for bringing me to them, though I knew, deep down, they were the ones who had saved me. There's more, he said gently, holding up another paper. This one's for you to sign. It legally changes your name to Nicole. And this, he held up a second sheet, updates your school records to match. My hands were trembling. I nodded, tears slipping down freely now as I clutched the pen and signed. That was the moment, the true one. The one where I wasn't just some girl trying to survive. I was Nicole. I was theirs. Chloe and I clung to each other, crying in the best way, with relief, with joy, with finally. Arthur stepped away, giving us a moment, but I didn't let him go too far. I followed him into his office, closed the door behind me. Arthur. He looked up, eyes still damp, heart open. I walked to him, sat gently in his lap, my arms sliding around his neck. We had a child once, he said softly. A daughter, Nicole. She died as a baby. We never had another. And now, he stopped, unable to finish. I understand, I said gently, and I swear you'll never regret this. Never. We sat there for a moment, the weight of it hanging between us. Can I call you Dad? I whispered. He looked at me, really looked, and then nodded. I think I'd like that, Nicole. We stayed like that while me curled in his arms, the warmth of that moment sealing something sacred between us. But, he added suddenly, I run this house, and you better not forget it. I grinned. You wish you ran this house. Chloe runs this place, and we both know it. But lucky for her, she's got backup now. Laughing, I skipped out of the office, his chuckles following behind me. School started, and I stepped into the halls not as Kyle pretending to survive, but as Nicole finally breathing. My records matched, my identity aligned, and the school counselor, in quiet, whispered tones, promised support and discretion. We became a family, a real one. 3 pieces that clicked together after years of feeling broken. Arthur Dad was firm but fair, and underneath all that sternness, he was a teddy bear. I learned how to bend him just like Mom did. She was the expert, I was still in training. My doctor discovered what I'd been doing with the hormones, and instead of scolding me, helped regulate everything safely. With proper care, my body and mind began to align more than ever before. Chloe Mom grew more alive every day. She and I took walks every evening now, our arms linked, sharing stories and recipes and little pieces of our pasts. Dad didn't join us, not since a minor stroke years ago, but he cheered us on and followed the diet we created, shedding weight and gaining energy. And then, Eric. He noticed me, asked questions, laughed at my jokes. There was a sweetness to him that made me blush, and while nothing serious had happened yet, there was a sparkle of maybe between us. I turned 18 in a few weeks. The moment I reached that milestone, I'll take the final step to becoming physically what I've always been inside. But the truth is, I've already arrived. It was a Saturday morning, pale light slanting in through the curtains, brushing softly against the comforter I'd curled beneath. I woke to the sound of Chloe humming in the kitchen, the gentle rhythm of eggs cracking, water running, a pan sizzling. The air smelled like cinnamon toast and warmth. It wasn't special, not really, no holiday or occasion. Just another day in a house that finally felt like mine. I was 17 for exactly 2 more weeks. In 14 days, I'd walk into the clinic with my parents at my side, and sign the final consent form that would begin the last phase of my medical transition. There was no fanfare in it, no movie-style orchestra swelling behind the moment, but there was a quiet gravity, the kind that fills you with equal parts fear and certainty. And then, everything changed. It started with a knock at the door, unexpected, sharp and strange. Chloe opened it, and the moment she did, I knew something was wrong. Her voice had that polite edge she used when she was trying not to show concern. She called my name. 2 plainclothes officers stood in the hallway, their badges worn, eyes tired but not unkind. "We'd like to speak with Nicole, please." Dad joined us, his presence solid and calming. "She's right here," he said. "What's this about?" The officers exchanged a glance. One of them, a tall woman with sharp features and a faded lipstick stain on her coffee cup, took a deep breath. "It's about Kyle. We mean Nicole. There's been a motion filed. Her biological parents have petitioned to challenge the custody ruling." The floor felt like it vanished beneath me. "What?" Chloe asked sharply. "After all this time, they've been in and out of institutions," the officer continued, "but apparently someone new entered the picture, an attorney, working pro bono, convinced them they might still have a legal chance, especially given the upcoming medical procedures." Silence fell. It wasn't just fear I felt, it was betrayal, rage, panic. I looked at Dad, his jaw clenched, eyes distant, calculating. Chloe reached for my hand, her grip firm, motherly, fierce. "Do they have a case?" Dad asked. "They shouldn't," the officer said, "but that doesn't mean it won't go to hearing." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my room, holding the soft grey sweater dress Chloe had bought me the day I first became me. I stared at the mirror, at the girl with strawberry blonde waves and steady eyes, and I whispered a promise to her: they won't take us back. No one will ever take us back. The weeks that followed moved like a dream trapped halfway into a nightmare. I gave statements. Chloe and Dad did too. Lawyers were called. Letters were exchanged. I was told, more than once, to remain composed. That it was all procedural. But I wasn't a procedure. I was a person. 1 week before my 18th birthday, we sat in a courtroom, and across the aisle, I saw them, the people who made me. Mom, thin as a ghost, her eyes vacant, lips twitching with nervous energy. Dad, trying to look respectable in a jacket that didn't fit, his hands shaking as he whispered to his lawyer. And then there was me. I wore the dress Chloe chose, simple and strong. I wore my heels, the ones you said made me look like I stood taller, and I wore makeup not to hide, but to shine. I took the stand. I told the truth. I told them how it felt to grow up in a house where love was conditional, where silence was safer than truth. I spoke of hunger, fear, bruises. I spoke of makeup wiped away in terror, skirts hidden under floorboards. I spoke of the night I ran, and how, for the first time, I chose me. Then I told them about Chloe, about Dad, about how I learned to cook, sew, laugh again, about how I studied, walked into school every day as myself, and looked people in the eye. I told them how I stopped flinching when someone reached for my shoulder. I told them how it felt to be called a daughter and believed. I looked at the judge, tears in my eyes, and said the only thing that mattered. They didn't lose a son. They never had one. But Chloe and Arthur, they chose me. And I choose them. It was quiet when the gavel fell. No one cheered. No one cried out. But something unspoken passed through the room, like justice had finally remembered who it was meant to serve. The petition was denied, permanently. and I was allowed to walk out of that courtroom, head high, as Nicole, daughter of Arthur and Chloe. The morning of my 18th birthday, I woke to a breakfast tray and a card that read to our daughter, "For the day you were born again." The appointment was quiet, clinical. I signed the form with a calm hand, no tremble, no regret. Later that night, we celebrated not with streamers or candles, but with music, soft dancing in the living room, and laughter that felt sacred. Dad wore a silly hat. Chloe baked the same cake she made every year for their anniversary. I made a wish as I blew out the candles, but it wasn't a wish, really. It was a promise. I would never waste what they gave me. It's been 2 years now. Eric, yes, that Eric still calls every Friday night. We're both finishing our 2nd year of college, and he still calls me his strawberry girl. Sometimes I pretend to hate it. I never really do. Chloe and I walk every evening still. She tells me stories about her own girlhood stories she never shared before. Dad says I've become dangerously skilled at running his office, and he's probably right. We hired someone new last week, and I got to show them around. It felt surreal, like I was on the other side of something I once couldn't even name. I'm 20 now, strong, capable, whole. And sometimes, when I catch my reflection in the window, hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, clipboard in hand, I smile. Not because of how I look, but because I remember the girl who once ran barefoot through snow, scared and shaking, with a makeup bag stuffed into a torn backpack. She didn't know what she'd find, but she found home. And one day, when I have a daughter of my own through adoption or chance, I'll tell her this story. Not to scare her, but to remind her, you are never too lost to be found. You are never too broken to be loved. And sometimes, family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up. It's who stays. It's who calls you daughter and means it.